All right, testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think we are looking good. We are back for part 2 of dissecting Trump's cabinet of Muppets. In the first episode, part 1, we looked at Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard, and the truly bizarre Dr. Mehmet Oz. What we saw in all three candidates is a representation of the new right, as they're calling it, a shift away from the old right of the past into something that resembles a different Republican Party, one that retains all of the essential patriotism and pro-business policies, but this time comes with it an anti-war slant, as well as a more nationalistic and populist flavored brand of conservatism. This ain't your parents' conservatism. This is a new brand of anti-woke based nativist conservatism of Gen Z broccoli-haired kids. And if you'll remember from part 1, we're placing them in two camps. Are they members of the power elite in that they represent a bridge between the CEOs and government, politicians, business people that can transition from private to public, joining government to facilitate an atmosphere in which they can allow private sector to flourish? Or are they what we call unprincipled opportunists? And these are the people that are pretty much lifelong politicians or lifelong clout chasers, people that don't really have any sort of ideological consistency. One minute they're anti-war, the next they're pro-war, or they're pro-war with slight caveats. At the end of the day, they're just doing whatever they can to be famous and to have power. And those people are much more exciting to look at. So for our first person today, we'll knock it off the list because she's very much just a member of the power elite, plain and simple. And that is Trump's new pick for Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Like I said, we're starting off with Pam because it's pretty straight and simple. This bitch belongs to the power elite. When you go through her career, it seems to be a pretty clear-cut case of just corporatism through and through. She's most known for being Attorney General of the state of Florida, during which time her first act was to cover for foreclosure mills. These were law firms in the state of Florida that were using fake documents to take people's homes in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. Before Bondi took office in 2011, the Economic Crimes Division of the Florida Attorney General's office had opened investigations into 3 of the main law firms profiting off of these illegal foreclosures. Basically, there were so many houses in the wake of 2008 that were being foreclosed upon by the banks that the banks hired out third-party law firms to expedite the process of foreclosure. These law firms started employing, shall we say, illegal means of speeding up the process that would sometimes result in the illegal foreclosure of individuals' private property, literally taking somebody's home despite them not being officially foreclosed upon by the bank. And the guys who ran these illegal law firms were racking in tens of millions of dollars, and they all did so with zero fucks given. These cases were so egregious that the victims found documents that were literally signed bogus assignee or that were dated 9/9/9999. These fuckers couldn't even bother to fill out the paperwork correctly. They were in such a frenzy of foreclosing on people's homes. So the attention that the investigation drew worked, and by 2010, all banks ceased foreclosures in the state until they can ensure that the process could be done legally. That is, until Pam Bondi came to town. Pam was elected in 2011. And interesting enough, one of the law firms under investigation, aka a foreclosure mill, actually donated thousands of dollars to her campaign. And wouldn't you know, just like that, upon taking office, Pam Bondi immediately removed all the investigators looking into these foreclosure mills, even straight up firing the top 2 investigators for alleged lack of professionalism. You can't get more blatantly corrupt than that. She would quickly wrap up the investigation. One of the foreclosure mills would settle for a paltry $2 million, which is a drop in a bucket based on the amount that they stole. All the other cases were dismissed outright with no repercussions, completely swept under the rug. Sorry you literally had your home stolen from you, but money talks in Florida.
Don't tread on me.
In 2016, Bondi, now 5 years into her relatively uneventful attorney general career, would be asked by 20 fellow Floridians for help recovering money from none other than Donald Trump after falling victim to his fraudulent Trump University scam. If you recall, Trump University, or Trump U, was this scam that Trump did in like the 2000s where people would pay sometimes upwards of $10,000 to get like some sort of real estate credential, thinking that they would, learn how to invest and flip homes, but really just ended up being like showing up to a hotel ballroom and like watching a video on a TV screen of like Trump probably like giving the most half-assed speech ever. It was a total scam, and there were class action lawsuits from multiple states. But Florida was not one of them. And this gets so pathetic because some of the Floridians were simply asking Trump for refunds of just literally $1,400 after the course was discontinued and seen as blatantly fraudulent. As pressure for a class action lawsuit was mounting in Florida, and Pam Bondi was being pressured to make up her mind about whether or not she would, as Attorney General, be representing her fellow Floridians in suing Donald Trump for scamming tens of thousands of dollars from them, a $25,000 payment was donated to Pam Bondi's re-election campaign. And that payment came from none other than Mr. Donald J. Trump. And just like that, whatever momentum the lawsuits had miraculously stopped in its tracks. By the way, side note, the exact sequence of events happened in Texas with then Attorney General Greg Abbott. There was mounting pressure for a class action lawsuit on behalf of the Texans that got scammed from Trump U. Trump donated money to his campaign, dropped the charges. Tough on crime, red state, and you're just going to let a billionaire scam artist from the People's Republic of New York City to take advantage of your people, and you're not going to do shit about it. Pussy. In 2019, Pam Bondi leaves politics behind and immediately becomes a paid lobbyist for some of America's biggest corporations, such as the GEO Group, the nation's largest private prison company, which has already seen its stock soar in the wake of Trump's victory, anticipating his mass deportations to fill their facilities. The company predicts upwards of $400 million in additional revenue. Pam Bondi also represented Amazon and Uber, both companies with invested interest in relaxed antitrust laws, an area that conveniently the U.S. Attorney General oversees. She also previously worked with the government in Qatar, lobbying on their behalf. She would also briefly go on to be a part of Trump's legal team during his first Senate impeachment trial. So whether or not Pam Bondi is a part of the power elite or if she's an unprincipled opportunist, I think it's quite obvious she's a member of the power elite. This is that in-between type that C. Wright Mills writes about in the book, The Power Elite. By moving from government to private business, she creates government policy that directly benefits CEOs, facilitating a tailor-made environment for their business interests to succeed. The in-between types, like Pam Bondi, are then rewarded with lucrative jobs in the private sector when they leave office. If you look at her career trajectory, she's an unremarkable politician in the public sphere. Her crowning achievement while in office was allowing health insurance companies to charge people with pre-existing conditions more money. After 9 years of unremarkable public sector work, she walks right into a high-paying gig as a lobbyist in the private sector. And now it's right back to politics to continue the mission of the power elite. It's not about individual successes. It's not even a partisan thing to call Pam Bondi's career as an attorney general unsuccessful. It just was. It's unremarkable. There's nothing that she would do there that like a company would look at her and go like, we need Pam Bondi on our team. No, it's about signaling the demonstration that you have the back of the power elite, regardless of ethics. Only a true orc of the power elite would do what she did in defending those foreclosure mills. Also, she's born into a rich family, so she was kind of bred to be a member of the power elite. All right, so next up is the reason why we only have 2 people on this episode. Normally I want to do 3, but I wanted to leave an extra amount of time for my boy, Trump's pick for Health and Human Service Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. RFK Jr. represents one of the more perplexing shifts in the new right's evolving cultural identity, diet and nutrition, which is extra perplexing given that the leader of the new right movement is a fat fast food junkie who brags about not exercising. RFK Jr. is the son of Robert F. Kennedy. JFK was his uncle. He was raised his entire life on the Kennedy compound in Massachusetts. He had attended multiple elite universities at Harvard, London, New York City, and Virginia. Right out of college, despite no experience that I can find on the internet, he was declared the Assistant District Attorney of Manhattan. However, the job wouldn't last long as he would fail his bar exam and get convicted for heroin possession, causing him to have to go to rehab, which apparently ended a 14-year addiction to the substance. However, this would end up being a blessing in disguise as he would eventually pass the bar and practice environmental law, going on to protect the state of New York from big-time polluters, such as suing General Electric for decades worth of illegal dumping and spearheading a successful campaign to close a nuclear power plant just outside of New York City. The more you read into the list of accomplishments from RFK Jr. before he became RFK that we know in the memes and whatnot, the more he sounds like a TRT-infused Greta Thunberg. He was anti-coal, creating a clean coal is a deadly lie campaign that sued dozens of mining companies. He went after factory farms across the country for their negative effects on the environment. He assisted indigenous communities in South America to stop construction of dams on their lands. He even publicly went after the US military for their role in damaging the environment, even going blue-haired feminist mode and being arrested for occupying land in a protest. Needless to say, RFK Jr. was a lib, capital L. Literally in that he was a registered Democrat his entire life. He campaigned for Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, but also he's a lib in spirit by championing many left-wing issues such as global warming, wealth inequality, and even anti-interventionist foreign policy. RFK Jr. once upon a time even went full pussy hat wearing MSNBC lib when Trump got elected, calling Trump supporters Nazis and likening Donald Trump to Hitler. You remember that time? It's wild. Even crazier that I found was that Obama actually wanted to make him head of the EPA. The only reason he didn't is because he was scared of the backlash from Republican senators who literally considered RFK Jr. a left-wing extremist. Obama was such a fucking pussy. So how does TRT-infused Greta Thunberg end up in Donald J. Trump's cabinet? A president who fundamentally disagrees with and is actively working to unravel RFK Jr.'s entire legacy. Well, as we know, outside of enabling genocide, the Democratic establishment is petrified of anything even remotely controversial and prays at the altar of political correctness. And let's just say RFK Jr. had one particular third rail topic that made him a black sheep within the party. We're talking vaccines, folks. Vaccine discourse in 2024. You ready? So to be fair to RFK Jr., he rejects the label as an anti-vaxxer and categorizes himself as simply advocating for increased testing into the safety of vaccines. However, at the same time, as recent as 2023, he has said, quote, "There is no vaccine that is safe and effective." So basically his big claim to fame within the vaccine skeptic space, his breakout mixtape, if you will, was linking vaccinations in children to autism in an op-ed that he published in Rolling Stone and Salon, both of which became extremely controversial. Now, full disclosure, I don't know shit about science. I don't know shit all about vaccines. So the things that he's claiming, I don't know if they're true or not. The scientists, I don't know if they're corrupt or not. I don't know enough to form an opinion. I'm sorry, you're not going to get that info from me. However, RFK Jr. has been publicly proven to be full of shit on multiple occasions. The most notable case, in my opinion, from what I could find, was the Samoa measles outbreak. In 2018, 2 children died from apparently taking a vaccination for measles. Anti-vax groups from around the world seized on the opportunity for public relations reasons. They even purchased Facebook ads to highlight the incident. RFK Jr. hopped right on a plane with a lot of other anti-vaccine advocates, or vaccine skeptic advocates, headed to the independent island state, even meeting with the Prime Minister and discussing the topic of vaccine skepticism. His position was clearly that the vaccines they took were most likely the cause of these children's deaths. And RFK Jr. preached this position not only to Facebook moms in Florida, but also to the families in the island of Samoa. However, it would later be discovered that the 2 children that died did so because of nurses accidentally administering a muscle relaxant along with the vaccine, something that obviously went unobserved by RFK and his companions upon announcement. But in the wake of this incident, vaccination rates for measles in the island of Samoa would fall from 74% to 34%, and usher in a full-blown measles outbreak the following year with over 5,000 cases and 79 deaths. So RFK Jr. was already a celebrity within the small alternative medicine social media space. But when COVID-19 dropped, this man became Elvis within the alternative medicine space. During the pandemic, the amount of followers this guy had skyrocketed. All the right-wing manosphere figures like Joe Rogan fawned over his counter-narrative rhetoric, platforming him in ways that he had never previously been. For anyone whose algorithm during the pandemic was even slightly off the mainstream, this dude was everywhere. The mainstream media attacked this guy on basically a daily basis. He was like the best gift to MSNBC and CNN. And of course, all the pearl-clutching libs, labeled him a conspiracy theorist and the misinformation panic. You know the story. We don't need to relive the fucking pandemic. Now, what is it that he actually said about COVID-19 and the vaccines? A lot. The man said a shitload about all of the above. And it's mostly all over the place. And I'm also coming from this after the fact. I wasn't following him really throughout his best run being COVID. But from what I researched, I would interpret his overall messaging to be two things. Number one, that the pandemic benefited billionaires and that they schemed to prolong and exaggerate its effects for profit. Number two, that the vaccine was potentially dangerous and or ineffective. Now, as I said before, I don't know about the COVID vaccine. I'm not a science person. Since I was a child, I fucking hated science. It was always boring to me. I was never able to understand it properly, let alone be interested in it. So like I said, even if I could find evidence to support one way or the other, I wouldn't know enough to have an opinion on it. But what I will say is that part of RFK Jr.'s rhetoric at this controversial juncture in his career contains a hallmark of right-wing grifter messaging. And that is talking about exploitative outcomes of capitalism, and rather than having a structural criticism of the system, assigning blame to an individual. For example, it's not that the Western healthcare industry is a business that is chiefly concerned with maximizing profits, instead of actually caring for people's health.
No, it's just bad guys being mean. If we got good guys running the big pharma and the healthcare system, then they sure wouldn't take advantage of people. It's just the good billionaires, not the bad ones.
And I'm sorry, but that is the most bootlicking cuck bullshit I've ever heard. Bill Gates and other fucking creepy billionaires made trillions off the pandemic because they are ruthless capitalists who can turn any scenario that takes place on this planet into profit. And any regulation or apparatus that can hold them even semi-accountable has been thoroughly removed by politicians like the one RFK Jr. now bends his knee to. Now, that isn't to suggest COVID is just some natural circumstance that arose and these guys took advantage of it. There's definitely a whole lot of fuckery around the pandemic that warrants a lot of skepticism. But similar to the Panama Papers or Jeffrey Epstein, these are structural issues that our system enables, not isolated incidences or bad actors. These are structural problems that need structural critiques. If RFK Jr.'s main criticism of the healthcare industry is that they profit off of illness and their remedies are unsafe, it sounds like a tremendous miscommunication and waste of time to label that a vaccine issue. Unless the incentive to profit off of people's suffering is removed, I don't know how you can effectively stop it from happening. Somebody will always just fill the role to profit off someone's sickness. This requires an argument for socializing healthcare, and removing the profit motive would make much more sense, be far less controversial or weird, and accomplish the same goals. The irony that I can't get past in all this too is people forget this, I feel like, but the vaccine was created and fast-tracked under Trump's presidency. Trump was the one that declared a national emergency. The masks were recommended under his presidency, and he signed the $2.2 trillion emergency spending bill. That was Trump, not Biden. I mean, Biden would go on to fuck up and make things way worse, but let's just remember where this shit all started. This slight diatribe is all to say that RFK Jr., like Tulsi Gabbard from Part 1, feels just like another unprincipled opportunist, a bootlicker for capital, and an auditioning member for the power elite. Now with RFK Jr., take all that, add in a long history of affairs, multiple wives and divorces, his ridiculous steroid-filled physique at the age of 70 years old. I get the sense that this Kennedy just wants to be famous like his daddy was. Unfortunately for him, we don't live in a world anymore where being a genuinely, successful environmental lawyer doing like cool shit all around the world gets you to be a celebrity anymore. I mean, if anything, he adapted to the times. Based alternative medicine podcaster is the new rock star. Ironically, I think there's a chance that RFK Jr. doesn't get confirmed, and it has less to do with his COVID or non-politically correct takes and more to do with his completely reasonable ones about nutrition. RFK Jr. has brought up some very valid and important issues regarding nutrition and food in this country. And I think those positions are going to genuinely ruffle feathers with the power elite that funded Daddy Trump's campaign. Positions such as government subsidies for agriculture that produce corn syrup or harmful chemicals in processed foods are tied to hundreds of millions of dollars. So from that perspective, I definitely will be rooting for my boy RFK Jr. to succeed. Even if he gets a little bit of that stuff accomplished, that would be a positive. However, I'll be happy if I don't have to go another day with hearing that man's voice, because that shit sounds like glass in a garbage disposal. All right, that's the end of part 2. We got some bangers right there. Pam Bondi, annoying ass power elite wannabe bitch. RFK Jr. though, goddamn dude. Can we get like a Danny McBride film? Like Danny McBride, Kenny Powers play him, for a biopic. I would fucking love that. Next week's part 3, we got some more heavy hitters coming. We still got Linda McMahon. We still got Mike Huckabee, aka the GOAT. So stay tuned. Stay safe.